You guys, what's up? I'm so glad you made it back for part two. I'm Jen alongside my co host Chris, and we have a special guest that is still with us here from part one. And we are so.
Jenna and Chris have taken me against my own will. They're trying to make me do some podcasts about this guy. I don't even know who Brian Kohberger is. Who the fuck is Alec Murdoch? I'm from the UK.
Maybe we should start about what they found on him.
Yeah,
well, they didn't find anything really unusual for someone at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, just your average person that's fully dressed. You've got size 13 shoes on.
Why are you wearing shoes at 2 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, and don't forget the gloves as well. Any normal person that's going to bed wears gloves. Brian travelled to Pennsylvania. He's on the East Coast, I believe.
Yeah.
And he's travelled from the West Coast.
So the West Coast, the West Coast is behind. The West Coast is behind. Yeah, so it'd be a lot earlier for him.
2 hours behind. So 2 o'clock in the morning for him at that stage would have felt like maybe 10, 11, something like that.
Yeah, it would.
But why would he still be jet lagged? Like, not that he took a plane, but he had been there for like 2 weeks.
It might be a nice time for Brian to go and operate. It's a perfect time, isn't it? Like, think about the amount of times that they've got him on cell phone data pinging to his apartment, pinging to 112. We don't know the time of that. We don't know.
I wonder.
We don't know what time he's stalking the house.
Yeah, well, it makes me wonder if when he was in Pennsylvania, if at night, I know that they were watching him for a few days before they actually got him, but I wonder when he first got there, when he wasn't being watched, if he was going out at night or early in the morning to get rid of evidence, to like bury it or put it deep in the woods, you know, where he was at.
Yeah.
Little bits at a time. Anyway.
Well, he was actually a frequent jogger because one of his friends basically had noted previously in the media, one of the people that was actually worried about the knife crime that had happened in Idaho had texted his friend and said, I heard what's going on out there. It's had me a bit worried. Like, do you want to go for a run? So he got himself a jogging partner. Lo and behold, that jogging partner was Brian Kohberger. So the person that he was jogging with was the person that he was inadvertently afraid of. He came out in the media and spoke about it. So if Brian's like a natural jogger, as weird as it sounds, like, and he's
is that why he had a reflective vest?
It could be.
Well, it would be the reflective vest and the flashlight. I'm assuming they play that off as him being.
That's embarrassing.
And the gloves. What do you mean?
A reflective vest is embarrassing.
I run with reflective stuff in the morning. You have to be seen. I'm a runner.
We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Yeah, that will be played off. Whether or not whatever he's like using that for, that'll be played off as him jogging, like reflective vest, and he's using the flashlight to like flash his light at cars when he's out for a jog. That'll be the play of it. Whether or not that's the actual true case of it, that'll be a defense in that if it's to be used against him. But then, I mean, like starting off, evidence taken from Brian Kohberger's house. Number one, knife. Like,
but and here's the crazy thing, like, and I'm not trying to skip ahead, but they said knife, and then I think at number 5 or number 6, and maybe that is completely off, they clearly stated Smith & Wesson knife. So they didn't clarify the first knife,
which is weird. Yeah, and there's also another one as well. There's a knife in a sheath, right? Yeah, which is interesting.
They don't want to write something down that could be false information and then be used against him.
Yeah, it's a cover-all basis kind of strategy. So they do it for they do it for a lot of things, believe it or not, but it is a cover-your basis kind of strategy. If they say knife, that doesn't make it a particular knife. That leaves it to interpretation, which means it gives them more time to identify it and what it's been used for, etc., etc. If they give off exactly what it is, and then experts come back later in the case and say, well, it wasn't this type of knife, it then gets thrown out, it looks bad against prosecution. It's a cover your basis kind of thing.
For sure. Then what else stuck out to you with that? Because I can't wait to hear.
Depending on that Smith & Wesson pocket knife, that's quite a nasty looking knife, you know. Well, I mean, all right, okay, let's go through it. So you've got a knife, you've got a book with the underliner on page 118. That's weird. Anyway,
What do you think about that?
Well, that'll be something that pertains. It could be, for example, a paragraph. It would be something that they're obviously intending to use against him for whatever reason. It could be underlining on page 118. You literally never know what it could be. It could be something as weird as it could be a listing of a house, fucking like renting place, and he's literally circled the house.
Yeah, it's just obviously something suspicious. I mean, they could circle it
paragraph.
it could. Yeah, just
idea.
something.
It
doesn't necessarily connect it, but yeah, it's specific enough to be suspicious.
Yeah, enough to be used as evidence, because they're not just ripping loads of books from his house for no reason, are they? So bit of a weird one. You've obviously got the Glock as well. Then the Smith & Wesson pocket knife, which is, again, I found interesting that there's a couple of knives that have been taken in here. Knife 1, knife 2, knife 3. Again, that's just a cover your bases type strategy. That's why in the search warrant, they obviously said that they're going to be looking for any type of knife, sheath, anything they can. That's because if they don't put that in the search warrant, they wouldn't be able to take it. So they've obviously got as many knives as they can, sort of thing. But I do find it interesting that in the affidavit we had, it obviously stating about Ethan's wounds, and everyone kind of suggesting somewhat that it was a sharp object that killed him. So whether or not there was 2 things that were used that night,
look, Krys,
we've been saying that.
As I say, back us up on this one, because from the very beginning, I said leaving a knife sheath there is very, very stupid. But he is obviously
it's not stupid. It's not stupid if you're not intending to put the DNA back into the sheath. That's forensically aware. So, for example, there is like a multitude of different plays with that. One being the fact that, say, he uses the K-bar, or even takes a different knife and puts it in a K-bar sheath, and he has a different array of knives on him. Because when he walked past Dylan, she didn't see him brandishing a massive weapon. So, obviously, yeah, he could have deliberately left it there because there was no intention from him to be putting that knife back into a sheath, to have all that DNA just held in that.
Because you
that's
can
just
clean
another
the knife.
Object. Yep. Yeah, it's another object for him to bury.
Exactly. So, that's exactly what I said, I think, in one of our podcasts, that I believed he actually left it on purpose. I think that he left it there to not only deter them, but to keep DNA off of him.
Not even if it was, like, in my eyes, it could have been left on purpose, but he could have genuinely, from my perspective with Brian, obviously, I've always said that, theories and everything aside, I think he entered through the sliding door, didn't shut the sliding door, went upstairs, and obviously if he's using a K-bar, depending on the military grade as to what the state of that knife is, if he like I said, my theory is that Brian entered the sliding door, left it open, went upstairs, element of surprise. Obviously all attackers have that, a small close combat situation, girls being drunk that night, feeling like they've done everything to protect themselves up until that stage. If he enters, he's completely aware of the situation of what he's about to do, whereas the girls are in complete state of shock as to what's about to happen.
Right.
So he forward, puts his hand over one of the girls' mouths or does something, and then viciously attacks the first, then the second, because as we know, they were found on the bed. So wherever he attacked them, they weren't able to move. Maybe it's the stomach region, maybe he hits in a fatal spot, and unfortunately they pass within literally seconds from going unconscious. If he hit the fatal spot in the heart, that's under 10 seconds. If he hits anywhere within the abdominal region, it's going to be hard for them to move in any way, shape, or fashion. Neck, it's hard for them to scream, shout, do anything. So as you can imagine, he actually had quite a long time in there. So say he struggles with the first person as he's attacking the second, I believe that his sheath could have come off, and he could have noticed it come off, but just not cared. Just literally looked at it and been like, well, it's absolutely covered in blood. It's underneath one of the victims. I'm not going to pick that up and just cover myself in it. Like, because if he's
they could have grabbed it off. They could have yanked it off. They could have yanked it off of him trying to get to the knife.
But I just believe that he literally, like, whatever they've tried to do in that situation, I believe he kind of knew it was there, but just didn't care. I honestly believe that he would have seen it, or maybe it was dark, and we all know that he's got the visual snare effect. But that's then when I believe that Dylan shouting upstairs is what caused him to come downstairs, and straight ahead of him, maybe you've got Xana, Ethan. I'm assuming it's going to be Xana because I think Ethan's asleep because of the outline of blood on one of the mattresses when it was taken out. That was a double bed. The outline of it obviously seemed to be Ethan because, as we know from what was released from the police, Xana was found on the floor. So once he goes downstairs, straight ahead of him, unfortunately, maybe he just does not see to the right-hand side of him, just tunnel vision straight ahead, goes for a second attack, and then from there onwards, it's just kind of a case of getting out. We don't know what happened in the second one, if it was any more difficult. Xana put up a fight. So we just don't really know what actually happened, but we know at that stage it was time for Brian to get the fuck out of there. Whether he wore the clothing underneath his clothing that he brought and then just literally took his clothing off before he got in the car, or as he was about to get in the car, or as he's about to leave the home and wrap the knife in it and then just leave. As we know that there's not a lot of prints going about, things like that, things to that nature. So yeah, I believe that he might have used at some stage, he could have used a different knife. He could have, as he's going down the stairs, he could have put the K-bar somewhere. We don't know, and then used a different
I feel like he could have planted that knife sheath.
I think he may have purposefully left the sheath because he felt confident that there was nothing on the sheath that would come back to him, and maybe it could be a deterrent.
Criminology, but Brian's not to know that his cousin has done one of the DNA tests.
Exactly.
All on the internet. And when you put your information on the internet like that, it does state that it can be used by the police for DNA or whatever to match in any case that they need to. So obviously when you're putting your DNA on there, it's completely different. It is your DNA. So they're able to match and get a profile without him knowing specifically that they're even onto him and doing that. I mean, the fact that he was emptying trash at 4 a.m. into his neighbour's bin is just it's going to be another fun case. Like, I don't know how you've got to come up with the most outlandish, stupid excuse for that. Like, you know.
For defense, yeah. But I feel like in his head, he said, well, look how long I've gotten away with this. I just traveled across the whole goddamn country and they still don't know. In his head, he thought they didn't know. So
I'd beg to differ that he was paranoid to fuck because he was wearing gloves everywhere. So he knew at some point that he was aware to a degree. If you're wearing gloves to the supermarket,
you have to be.
You've got to be. You're still paranoid, and as well, like on obviously the search warrant that we've got here, you've got folder containing paperwork, Acer laptop, green leafy substance, and green container. Obviously, they can't say what that is without testing it. But like I said earlier in one of my,
you know what that is?
It's not oregano, is it? So it's obviously it's obviously what we know. Do you know what I mean? It's obviously what it is, isn't it? At the end of the day. So we all know that Brian's having a bit of the old Bob Marley. And the thing is, from my perspective, I'd say that he's doing that out of paranoia. So it's to relax himself. Because if he's trying to cope with what he's done, trying to get rid of his anxiety, you know what I mean? He might have a little toke thinking he's going to get away with it. But again, this now applies to the fact that for so long we've been told that Mr. Kohberger is clean and he's not been an addict and he's not been this. But it turns out we've had one story from a previous case that came out from like Reddit, etc., that there was someone that he knew that he was doing drugs with, and now we've got another actual finding of him smoking weed. I know it's but it kind of links into the Kohberger's not so clean, is he?
No, and I think that he probably, here's what I think. I think that he probably felt pretty confident in himself until the drive to Pennsylvania when he got pulled over twice. I think he is fully aware that they were pulling him over on purpose, because who the fuck gets pulled over 2 times when they're not doing anything wrong?
Within 9 minutes.
Obvious. Right. So
and getting let go.
Yeah, and the second one being a lesser identified vehicle. So, I mean, it was very obvious. I don't remember if it was the first one or the second one. The first one was like cops. The second one was like an unidentified police vehicle of some kind, which is super sus.
State police.
I don't remember what it was, but...
So, like, reading Brian Kohberger's body language as well from that interview, if you notice that he looks a lot of his attention goes to his dad to answer the questioning, and the reason being is he lets his dad, who's obviously unaware of the events, play out the situation so that he can go off the scenario as to what he's going to give information-wise to the police. So you'll notice that what Brian does is he kind of just says, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" And he lets his dad talk, and his dad says, "Oh, we've just come from WSU." It's not till his dad says that Brian's eye line meets his dad as if to say, "Oh, the fuck have you said that?" Okay, then move with that narrative to then play it out. Oh, we're just this, oh, we're just that. You can tell he's in a panicky state because he's the way that he's looking over, the way that he's glaring the entire time.
Oh, his eyes are huge too.
He's like,
he has saucer eyes, like he's terrified.
Yeah,
I think he knew right then
the whole time because he's obviously in a heightened state where he's trying to figure out. He knows the play, like you're saying. He knows the play there. So to Brian, it's he's literally trying to figure out. Do they know? Is this the stop where they're about to pull me out of the car and it goes from here? So I'm pretty sure that he must have been in a rush after that to get as much stuff out. That's why he's putting stuff in his neighbor's bins.
Yeah, I think that really is when he knew that, okay, they know who I am. They are watching. And I need to do it now.
Yeah, because they tried to play it off and say, news outlets came out and said, which you could never trust the news outlets 100%. We're talking
about News Nation 100% correct 100% of the time.
Wait, what?
News Nation is 100% correct 100% of the time.
All right, we're fighting over this.
Ashley Banfield.
Oh no!
Look,
that. But I love News Nation. They're 100% correct.
I am so glad that you said that. So